I just finished playing the original Witcher video game. Today, my goal is to find out, had I played this back in 2007, would it have kept my attention to eventually lead me to what would become my favorite game of all time, The Witcher 3? So like I said, I just recently finished the original Witcher video game. Today, I'm going to try and take myself back to 2007 and see if this game would have had me curious about The Witcher 2 and eventually The Witcher 3. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to talk about gameplay, and I'm going to do what I'm calling lightly compare The Witcher 2 other games that came out that year. And the reason why I'm using the word lightly is because The Witcher 1, the original Witcher, was the first release by CD Projekt Red. It's kind of an indie game. Compared to the other games that came out back then, those dev shops had much more experience, and we'll get into that. So the first thing I want to say about this game is, if you go to play it, save and save often, because this game will crash on you at least 10 times. I don't know how common it was. I wasn't playing computer games in 2007, and this game was only available on PC. In 2007, the only video games I was really playing were NBA 2K and Guitar Hero. So I'm not sure if it was that common for the games to crash. I'm not going to hold it against the game. But yeah, if you're going to play this, definitely make sure that you save all the time. So the next thing about the gameplay is movement. Now, they had two different ways you could move. One of them was what we are all very familiar with the WASD and the mouse. You know, you move back and forth, left and right, strafing with the keyboard, and then you look around and go the direction you want with your mouse. The other one was mouse only, and I didn't play like this at all, but it was kind of like point and click. You just point and you click to the area that you want to move to. I spent zero time playing in that mode, so there's nothing I could tell. There's nothing I could say is much more about that. Another aspect of the gameplay that I would like to talk about is leveling up. Your typical tree. You've got a tree for everything. All the different Witcher signs has its own tree. Each different fighting style has its own tree. And so they did a really neat thing. Like it at first I thought it was corny, but I actually ended up feeling, I did get that feeling of accomplishment when what they did was, at different levels, you would start earning different kinds of points. Like first you'd start off with, like, you'd level up and you'd get 2 or 4 bronze points, and you'd be able to spend those on certain attributes and skills that are only on the bronze level. And then eventually you'd start getting silver with bronze, and then gold points with the silver and the bronze points. That definitely gave a good feeling of progressing and becoming a stronger Witcher that I really appreciated. So the last thing I want to talk about in regards to gameplay is fighting. So The Witcher has 2 swords, a steel sword for humans, pretty much, and then the silver sword for fighting monsters. And each of those swords had what was it? It was like a strong, a fast, and a group fighting style that you could switch between on the fly in the middle of battle. So I mean, obviously, you had to know what kind of opponent you were going up against in order to um best utilize how you're going to fight, because all you did to fight was you clicked on an enemy and then you would wait for your sword icon on the screen to light up with a flame, and you'd click again so you can continue your combo. And depending on your level, your max combo was like a 4-hit combo. I mean, in the game, it looked way more than that. Geralt's doing backflips and all these things, and all you're doing is like clicking about every second and a half ish. Very much kind of like Diablo 2 with an extra step. This was boring. This made it like I mean, you also had your Witcher signs, and I think that's kind of why CD Projekt Red went with the route that they did with the fighting, is because you left click, and you're gonna fight with your sword, and then your right click is gonna trigger whatever active Witcher sign you have going on. I'm not a fan of how they decided to do the fighting, and we'll talk about that more in this next part, where we're gonna compare it to other games that came out. So the other games that came out, there was a ton of games that came out 2007. There's a ton of games that came out every year, and I'm sure that just keeps getting more and more. Well, maybe not so much recently to certain events, but up until 2020, I'm sure the amount of games that came out just grew exponentially every year. Anyways, so 2007, we had games like BioShock, Assassin's Creed, God of War 2. I want to talk about Assassin's Creed and God of War, because the fighting style in Assassin's Creed and God of War are kind of similar to God of War 2 is not super similar to The Witcher, but you'll see what I'm saying. So with Assassin's Creed, you had the sword. I mean, you had the blades and all that stuff, but also there was swords and such, and just like The Witcher. And so with Assassin's Creed, you had a fast attack and a heavy attack, and you'd be able to build combos. And I feel like CD Projekt Red could have done something similar to that, as opposed to figuring out what kind of fighting style you need to use against the enemies. Because I'll be honest, when it came to the fighting style, depending monster or human, probably 85% of it, I was just using the fast attack style, and that worked against almost everything. And then if there was a bunch of people surrounding me, I'd switch over to the group, which was really just the fast one. You just did more arcing attacks and back bends and all these things, so that you had a wider range of attack, and really it hit with like the same power as the fast attack. I think what kind of held back CD Projekt Red was not knowing how to handle how to trigger the best way to trigger the Witcher signs. I spent the whole game using 1 through 5 on the keyboard to select which sign I wanted active, and then you'd right click on the mouse to trigger that Witcher sign. What they could have done is, say Igni was set to 3, and if I was on Ard and then I hit 3, it would activate Igni, and then if I hit 3 again, it would trigger the Igni response. Now, the reason why I brought up God of War 2 is because it's a lot like Assassin's Creed with the combos between the fast and the heavy, but they also had, like, you know, the multiple weapons, which also plays into like how the signs could have worked with the swords. I just feel the fighting could have been better, but I don't hold it against CD Projekt Red, because this was their first video game they've ever made. I'm pretty sure, yeah, because until Cyberpunk it was just Witcher stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first game that they had released as a dev shop, and you know, they to be honest, like, they did a hell of a job. I mean, it crashed all the time, but I'm watching the footage here that I've got playing for this video, and I mean, it was a good game for their first run. And as a matter of fact, I played Assassin's Creed back when it came out on the PlayStation 3. That game was boring. I'd play this Witcher game before I'd ever play the original Assassin's Creed. That's for sure. And so a lot of that goes into the reason why a lot of people play The Witcher and why people love The Witcher. The story is solid. So kind of in my wrap up here, if you're a Witcher fan and you're wondering if you should play this game now, what is it? It's been 14 years. We're at the end of 2021. Yeah, and it came out like in September or October of 2007 or something like that. If you like the Witcher story and you want to go more into that, yes, play this game. If you like The Witcher 3 for the gameplay and the fighting and all of that, you're not going to get that with this game, obviously. So the big question, would this game have kept my attention? Would I have been interested in playing The Witcher 2? The honest answer is I don't know. I probably would have waited to see the trailer for The Witcher 2. And since I haven't played Witcher 2, that's coming up soon. I couldn't tell you if that would give me to The Witcher 3. But I would have had to have watched trailers for The Witcher 2 and, you know, checked it out and done as much research to see if that's something that I would have been interested in continuing. The story was good for the first one, but the storytelling is nothing like the third one. But so the third one pulled me in, which probably makes the first one better. So yeah, that's what I thought. I'd love to hear your guys' thought on the original Witcher, and whether did you play it before you played Witcher 2 or Witcher 3? Yeah, tell me your guys' story. If you liked what you watched, click thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks.